And then I said, hey Bard, you're supposed to slay the dragon, not lay the dragon. Oh God, I am so fucking tired of the horny bard discourse. People tell their horny bard jokes, which are low effort and unoriginal. Then people make jokes about how the horny bard jokes are low effort and unoriginal, which aren't funny, they're just a buzzkill. And then people make meta jokes about how the jokes about how the horny bard jokes are unfunny. And we just keep going around and around in circles, obsessing over the horny bard and forgetting the most important part, which is bards are awesome. They're one of my all-time favorite classes. They are so much fun to play and they're incredibly flexible. But they are the single most stereotyped class in D&D. And the worst part is the cliches go directly against what the books— I heard you were talking about bards. Oh, thank God you're here. Come on, tell them.
The greatest strength of bards is their sheer versatility. It's right here in the player's handbook on the bard page. And look, they have a wide-ranging knowledge of many subjects and a natural aptitude that lets them do almost anything well.
Exactly! If there's a class that is least suited to an oversimplified one-note portrayal, it's the bard.
Amen, sister.
Okay, that's enough. You can go now. Now, from what I can tell, the horny bard trope isn't nearly as common at actual D&D tables as the memes make it sound. But unfortunately, the prevalence of the concept still has an impact on how real people play. It can scare players away from bards as a class and can bias DMs against players who pick it. This is anecdotal, of course, but multiple people have told me that they didn't have any interest in playing a bard because of the cliches. And when they learned that they could play a bard as something other than a frisky rock star with a lute, they became way more interested in the class. If playing a stereotypical horny bard is fun for you, then I am not trying to take that away from you. Personally, I don't think something being cliche makes it inherently bad for D&D. We're not trying to write the next great American novel or revolutionize the film industry or anything. Our D&D games don't have to be groundbreaking or original in order to be fun. But I love the bard class too much to stand by and watch the tropes keep people from recognizing its appeal. So today we are dismantling everything you thought you knew about bards. The biggest misconception that I see about bards is that they have to be musical, and sure, music is definitely tied to the class. They're described as being masters of song and speech, they can choose to use a musical instrument as a spell focus, and at level 1 they have proficiency with no fewer than 3 instruments, which— damn, I've got 1.5 if you're being really generous about the ukulele. But if you don't want to involve music in your bard character, you don't have to. The handbook says that— Fine, yeah, go ahead, you can take this one.
Bards thrive on stories. A bard who can tell an awe-inspiring story from personal experience earns renown among other bards.
While some bards might tell those stories in the form of song, others might tell them through poetry, through writing, through powerful speech, or even through dance or art. There are so many ways to tell stories. I mean, I do it here on YouTube. Am I saying you should create a YouTuber bard? I mean, yes, that sounds hilarious, but no, I'm just saying that you can get creative about how your bard chooses to inspire, to perform, to influence, to create. If you don't want to play a character who sings or plays the lute, that doesn't by any means rule out bard as a class. Also, this might seem obvious to some people, but it has come up before, so I want to say it directly. You do not have to sing or perform at the D&D table in order to play a character who sings or performs. I know that when we watch actual play shows like Critical Role, we often see people bringing their real-life bardic talents to bear. But keep in mind, these are professional performers. They are playing D&D not just for themselves, but for an audience. When you're playing in a home game, you do not need to hold yourself to that same standard. You don't have to know how to fence for your rogue to use a rapier, and you don't have to be able to bench press hundreds of pounds in order to play a barbarian. That means that you don't actually have to be a musician in order to play a musician character. Some people like doing that. They want to bring their real-life interest in music into their character, and that's fine. In fact, that's me, but it is not a requirement. You can play a bard even if you don't have a musical bone in your body. God damn it, that is the perfect setup for a horny bard joke.
All done. Can I tell you a secret? I might be a blacksmith by day, but when the forge cools, I'm a storyteller. Every day I hammer out nails and horseshoes on this anvil, but when I get home, I use World Anvil. Did you catch that clever wordplay? I'm a professional. World Anvil is a world-building platform for writers, game masters, and any creator who needs a system to store and organize their ideas and lore. For example, I'm working on a romance about an adventurer who falls in love with his sword, but they can't be together because the sword is so sharp, their love is dangerous. It's super tragic. I have wiki-style World Anvil pages about all the places they travel together, indexed and cross-linked, with interactive maps and stat blocks for all the monsters they fight together. Of course, I have a complete timeline for their journey and all the romantic moments they experience along the way. And with the new Chronicles feature, I can place those events on a map, so it's easy to track where their first kiss was. Whew. What a bloody scene. With World Anvil's help, someday you'll see my name on the cover of a best-selling book, Steal My Heart by Temper, but it's steel like the metal. What? You don't think that's good? Fine, let's see you write a book. You can start using World Anvil for free, so there's no excuse. I'll even give you 40% off an annual membership if you use the code Ginny. Go on, let's see you come up with something as brilliant as Steal My Heart. I won't hold my breath.
If you haven't run into the horny bard stereotype before, God, I envy you. Don't ever join Reddit. Stay pure. The origins of the trope are a little hard to pin down, but it seems to be a combination of a lot of small individual factors, from the real-world idea of rock stars as sex symbols, to the class having access to a lot of charm spells, and even to 3rd edition requiring that bards have only non-lawful alignments, resulting in a class made up pretty much exclusively of insubordinate rule breakers. Some people have even attributed the roll to seduce bard mindset to players misunderstanding what charisma as a skill even means. Now, again, I am not saying that you can't play a horny bard if you want to, but if you do, for the love of God, please use protection. By protection, I mean have safety tools in place to make sure that your roleplay doesn't cross any boundaries and make your DM and fellow players feel uncomfortable. Here, I'll demonstrate how to use the X card on a banana. I do think a lot of people don't really understand charisma in D&D though. Come on, books, I know you're lurking.
I wasn't. I was just looking for something behind the door. Charisma measures your ability to interact effectively with others. It includes such factors as confidence and eloquence, and it can represent a charming or commanding personality.
It's very easy to oversimplify charisma and just equate it to charm, but being charming is only a part of what high charisma could mean. After all, charisma is used for a bunch of different skills.
A charisma check might arise when you try to influence or entertain others, when you try to make an impression or tell a convincing lie, or when you are navigating a tricky social situation. The deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion skills reflect aptitude in certain kinds of charisma checks.
You may notice that seduction or attraction are not named skills in D&D. While you could certainly use a charisma check to turn that sort of interaction into a dice roll, to equate charisma with flirtation isn't just reductive, it's irrational. If you're going to oversimplify charisma, it would make more sense to equate it to being persuasive or being a good liar. At least those are skills that are actually on your character sheet. When it comes to bards, we know that being persuasive, deceptive, and a good performer are core abilities for the class. Bards often fall into the role of the party's face, which basically just means the person who talks to NPCs. And certainly a class built on song and storytelling would call for a character adept at entertaining. But there's a simpler reason that charisma is a bard's spellcasting ability, and the handbook says it pretty directly.
Charisma is your spellcasting ability for your bard spells. Your magic comes from the heart and soul you pour into the performance of your music or oration.
Come on, did we learn nothing from Jack Black in School of Rock?
Who can tell me what it's really about? Frankie.
Scoring chicks?
No. See? No.
If you want to use your bardic charisma for seduction, that's your choice, but that's not what it's for. A bard's magic comes from their passion for their art. As long as you have that, horniness not required. Okay, this is gonna be a short section, but I have to say it anyway. I have seen so many people say that they don't like bards at their table because they're too silly. Honestly, this is so bizarre to me. I just want to remind everybody that any class can be played for comedy, and likewise, any class can be played with gravity. You can make a paladin who takes the Oath of the Ancients because he's committed to growing dank weed. You can make a warlock who accidentally made a pact by failing to read all the terms and conditions when she signed up for a line of credit at her local blacksmith. Trust me, if you want to play a ridiculous character, class cannot constrain you. At the same time, the bards I've played have mostly been pretty serious. My Doomsayer bard Bluestreak's whole thing was that she was convinced everyone's death and destruction was imminent, including her own. My poet bard Cleo was dealing with some major daddy issues and used her poetry to try and undermine the oppressive upper class. Her arc was one of the most emotional and dramatic I've ever played out. If you're a DM and you don't want players to choose the bard class because you're worried they won't play a serious character, I would highly recommend recommend that instead of controlling their class choice, you just talk to them about the tone of the campaign. It is completely possible to play a bard with a serious, dramatic personality if that's what everybody wants. And if you ban bards because you don't want silly characters, you'll be pretty annoyed when a player shows up with their new paladin, Bud Bongwater. If you want to create a bard character yourself, I think the very first question to ask is how they express their art. After all, their passion for storytelling is the central tenet of the class. From there, you can start to explore what bard college feels right to you and how high charisma would manifest itself in this particular character. For example, let's say you want to create a bard who uses dance to tap into his magic. You choose the College of Swords, pulling inspiration from the many cultures with long traditions of combining combat and art into sword dances. Because his deadly proficiency with blades can be disguised as an artistic pursuit, perhaps his charisma is that of deception. He's an experienced liar and speaks misleading or half-truths with practiced ease. Or maybe instead of the sort of bard who would play for spare coins in a tavern, you'd like to play a noble bard. She's been carefully trained to be an expert at her instrument and has an impressive talent that commands respect. Maybe she belongs in the College of Glamour, allowing her to captivate and enchant her audience, giving her power over them. Her charisma is that of grace and elegance. People pay attention to her wherever she goes, convinced even before she plays that she must be special in some way. She's persuasive, and people tend to trust her. Or you might want to create a bard whose music is rhythmic rather than melodic. They play the drums, weaving complex patterns with deft movements and a deep understanding of resonance. Maybe you look at the College of Spirits and decide to bring an occult flavor to this character, allowing them to compel powerful spiritual forces with these rhythms. Their charisma is something dark and threatening. They're unsettling to be around, and people are nervous to cross them. They find it easy to intimidate, and they're difficult for others to read. These are just a few examples off the top of my head. Get inspired by different kinds of art and storytelling in the real world, or by imagining how the magic and lore of the D&D world would affect the way people create art there. Also, remember that you can play a musician, or poet, or writer who isn't a bard. Bard is a versatile class, but you should choose it because you want to play a caster class, not because you want to play an entertainer. Plenty of backgrounds, including the entertainer background, give you proficiency with musical instruments, and those can be applied to a character of any class. There is absolutely no reason that a monk can't be a passionate dancer, or that a warlock can't have made their pact in order to gain commercial success as a performer, or that a cleric can't be a singer who raises their voice to praise their deity. If I could only deliver one message about bards to DMs, it would be to let go of your assumptions. As we've learned from the player's handbook itself, bards are a flexible class. That's kind of the whole point of them. Instead of assuming, let your player tell you what kind of bard they want to play. I've seen so many stories about players having bard characters rejected by DMs who were convinced that any bard was going to act a certain way and have a certain personality. I've seen people talk about DMs who forced sexually themed plotlines on bard characters who had shown no interest in these themes, just because they were bards. And of course, I've gotten comments from people who were suddenly interested in bards as a class for the first time, and all it took was hearing that they don't have to play a bard the way they thought they did. That said, there are of course players who do want to play a stereotypical bard, and if you and the other players don't find that fun, I would encourage you not to try and punish them in-game for it. I know using fantasy STDs or illegitimate children might get you a lot of upvotes on Reddit, but if you want your players to change their behavior, the most effective and respectful way to do that is to talk to them above table. In short, as I often find myself saying, just communicate. It's the only way to know for sure that everyone is on the same page. Remember, there is no direct line between bard and horny. You can make any class horny. Go forth and play a horny paladin or ranger or cleric. You can do it, I believe in you. In the meantime, if you like these class-specific discussions, you will want to watch my Warlock video next. It's all about how players and DMs can work together to make Warlock patrons a key part of the game. Ooh, what about a Warlock who's hot for their patron? See, there are so many options. Let's just get a little more creative with our randy characters.